I have picked up a cheeky little tip recently, and it helps to glass out your lacquer or your clear coat. If you've seen Thegunman or Paint Society and they get those absolute mirror finishes out of the gun, you're not getting the same, you're getting the orange peel effect. Then I have got a cheeky little tip. And no, this is not another one of those videos, what gun type to use, what gun settings to use. It's something completely different. We're gonna paint this bumper and find out. Let's get into it. Now, although this isn't the best test for a super smooth finish or being able to see it, when you get a flat panel, a bonnet, the side of a door, the whole side of a van, you will see the flatness even better. But we have a bumper that needs painting. It does have some flat surfaces. I believe this will do for the test. Now, I'm not an everyday painter. I'm a bit more than a hobbyist. I don't claim to be the best, so I still watch other people painting because every day is a school day. You're never too old to learn anything. No one knows better than anyone else, unless you know better than the next guy. So I'll talk you through a few steps, a few processes that I do to help get the best paint job. First of all, this was a used bumper on a friend's van. It was peppered in stone chips. It had a few scuffs in it, so I sanded all the lacquer off because it did have a bit of lacquer peel as well. We've sanded all the lacquer off. We sanded right through that, put a bit of filler in a few of the deeper pinholes or stone chips, and a few bits of filler in some damaged area. I then primed the whole bumper. I've rubbed it down with 500. I've then gone round the edges with an 800 soft pad in my hand to round any 50p corners off. When you sand something down with a sander, you can't sand round a corner, so you end up with 50p edges. So I've just done it. 800 round the edges. I've then pulled the cap out, cleaned around the cap and the inside of the bumper, then popped the cap back in. Cleaning is a massive part of getting a good paint job. I've cleaned it loads, I've blown it off loads, it's clean. I've even washed the inside of the bumper to try and eliminate any dirt or dust coming forward. And the reason I like to have my bumpers hanging, if you've got it on a panel stand, it's more than likely that you've done sanding on that panel stand and that panel stand is covered in dirt, debris, sanding dust or any contaminants you don't want onto your paintwork. So I have it hanging. That way there's no dust, contaminants coming from what it's sat on, and it does give you a good angle for painting. I'm obviously looking down on the bumper, so we've got no dry edges along the top. I can still get down underneath so we don't miss any. It's cleaned. Some blues, it's going back to this colour, aren't the best of coatings. They don't cover the best. Sometimes a little bit translucent. So I'm going to give it one wet coat of black to darken up the primer. Then I'm going to do one coat of the blue colour, another wet coat, let that flash off, and then we're going to come in with a dusty coat, also known as a dry coat. And then the tip that has really improved the flat finish out of the gun for me. Let me get some colour on this and let's get it painted. Just before we get into painting, I want to show you one of the most important steps of keeping your job clean. And that is, if you're a DIYer, you're going to get a lot of what people call silicone marks in your panel and it looks absolutely terrible. So one way I've eliminated them, I don't have all the money to buy the expensive posh moisture traps or the dehumidifiers that take the water out of the hot air from the compressor. I've made my own one out of cold galvanised steel ducting. What happens here, my airline feeds it into this cold galv pipe. It then runs all the way up, loops over, comes back down, and then it goes out. Where are we looking? Then it goes out into my spray booth. Yeah, check out my quick release fitting. That goes into the spray booth. All the moisture is collected in these two tubes at the bottom, and then I've welded two nuts and bolts on there. So every once a month or something like that, I undo the bolts, water drains out. that works the same as maybe like a fridge. The warm moist air goes into the cold galvanised pipe, condenses, drops to the bottom, comes out the other side, nice dry air. I have also got a filter which collects moisture and any dirt, debris that might be in the air. I normally keep my airline up on the wall. I don't want to be flapping loads of dust about, so I keep it up on the wall until it's needed. And then this is a homemade spray booth. Let me zoom out. This is a homemade spray booth. We have got polythene on the roof, concrete walls, painted white. I wet the floor. My extraction is at the back and my intake is over here. It's a little bit crude, but it does the job. The main key to any paint job, not in a booth, is wetting the floor. Any dust that's in the air, as soon as it lands on the wet floor, that's it. I have given it a clean with a water-based degreasant. I use truck wash. I've then gone over it again with a solvent-based panel wipe degreaser. I'm now going over it with a tack cloth. Sometimes plastics get a bit static, so the tack cloth really helps to get them off. And you can blow and tack at the same time. You can use your airline, but I've got one of these AliExpress finest air blowers. I have done as much as I can do to keep the panel clean. That is for cleanliness. That's still not going to help your lacquer finish. You could do all the steps in the world. You'll have no dirt in it. You've got perfect base coat. If you don't do this next step, or the step I'm going to show you in a minute, you can still get a ropey looking orange peel. I have been getting some watermarks in my first base coat application. So if you lay your base coat on too heavy, you get what some people call fish eyes silicons. Well, it's not silicone, it's still something that hasn't been cleaned off. Even though I've cleaned it twice, wiped it twice, it still might have the odd silicone mark. So I'm going to really lightly dust a coat of black on, visually inspect, there's no little circles, there's no little silicones, there's no little white marks. Then when I'm happy there's none, I'll bury it in black, one wet coat, that's going to take 10-15 minutes to flash off. Then one full wet coat of the blue, that's going to take 10-15 minutes to go off. Drop coat, and then it's lacquer time. No orange peel time. First coat of base coat is applied, and you can see my base coat is silky smooth. There's no dustiness to it. It's good. You can see prep marks. So black shows prep marks before it's lacquered, but it's fine. They are 500 and 800 marks, so they're totally fine. If it was silver, we might need to address it, but black shows prep marks until it's lacquered. Black is actually your friend. I did get 2 little silicone marks that I mentioned. Now that's fish eye, what some people call, but that is just contaminants that are on there. So I'm going to dust a little bit of blue over and dry it with a gun, and then we're going to wet coat the rest of it with the blue. I did get a bit of dirt right in the top on the first coat of base coat, but I had 2000 grit. You can use 1000 and stuff like that, but I had a 2000 grit to hand, so I just lightly tickled out the only bit of dirt in the base coat. First coat of blue base coat has dried nicely. And look how silky smooth the base coat is. That's what a wet coat does. And this blue has hidden all the prep marks that we could see. And if you remember those two silica marks, you can just see one there, but you won't see it when it's lacquered, and you're definitely not going to see it after the coat of lacquer. And one thing I haven't mentioned up to now is how to get any paint. It's not just your lacquer that flows out or glasses out, your base coat does the same. You're not going to use gun wash thinners with your paint. You're going to use Epoxy thinners. I use Octorool. We're here in the UK, I use Octorool, and this is a medium. That's nothing to do with the thickness of the paint. That is how fast it dries. In the summer, I'll use a slow. Any other time, I use a medium. Don't use extra fast thinners or reducer. It's lacquer time. I do use U-POL lacquer. It's cheap, but it's cheerful. It's very good. Now, I know a bumper takes about half a cup of paint. Most lacquers are 2-to-1, so we've got 2-part lacquer, and this is a U-POL hardener. Comes in the kit. It's about 70-80 pounds. 1-part hardener. Now, I've been told the trick you're just about to see works with no thinners, and if you're in the UK like I am, you've probably put more and more thinners in to try and get the flat finish, but the more thinners you put in, the less shine after it dries and you have to polish. I'm going for 10%. I will try no thinners in a later video and see if we still get the same shine. Let me mix this up, and it's finally time to show you the trick. It's all about warming up your lacquer to a better temperature. Some of you are going to say, I already know this, but let me show you. 20 seconds, half a cup. Yeah, tasty. What in the universal credit was that all about? A lot of you guys at home, professional painters, or you guys that work in the industry, will already know this. Warm paint reduces viscosity, so it comes out the gun flatter. Look how quick it runs through my paint strainer. Before, remember I'm in the UK, before that would take about 4 or 5 seconds to filter through the strainer. As soon as I've poured that in, that's gone straight into the cup. Perfect. The ideal temperature is about 30 degrees. I have just seen this tip a few weeks ago on Thegunman on YouTube. I saw this in one of his videos. He's a professional painter. He does some of the best paint I've ever seen, and he does this. I watch a lot of Paint Society, another YouTuber. He does some great videos, check him out. Lots of tips and tricks, and lots of his videos, how not to get any orange peel. I've never seen that. He says about gun settings this, fan fluid that, full fan this, what pressure's this. 2 bar of pressure is pretty good for most spray guns. Not all, but most spray guns. But I've never seen him mention anything to do with warming the painter or warming the lacquer up. I didn't warm the base coat, just the lacquer. And maybe that's because of where he is. I believe, I might be wrong, he is in Florida. Now it's always hot over there, 25, 30 degrees. So his lacquer is always optimal temperature. Anywhere else in the world where it's a bit cooler, the UK, many other countries, you're going to be struggling with not getting the same finish those guys have. So if you're in the UK or a cold climate and you haven't got a heated mixing room, warm your lacquer up in the ding ding machine for 30 seconds or less. You're aiming for 30 degrees. You watch how this comes out of the gun. Perfect. Wet coat, but not a full coat. Let that flash off 10-15 minutes. Another wet coat, maybe 20 minutes. And because it's a front bumper, I'm going to do 3 coats, and that keeps stone chips at bay. If you're doing the side of a vehicle, the back of a vehicle, the roof, you can get away with 2 coats. But to lower stone chip resistance, 3 coats. Watch how this first coat lays down. I'll lacquer it and I'll show you how it's come out. Just quickly, I am going to give it a tack rag off. Someone's here to bother me. Hello. Slight interruption there. So when you do wet coats of base coat, it's going to go on smooth. There's no need to tack rag it. Sometimes the tack rag can get some bits of dirt off. It can help. But we've got minimal dirt, but I've just applied 2 drop coats, 2 dusty coats. I held my finger on the trigger really lightly. I held the gun further back, and we've put a dusty coat on, and that makes it less patchy. But that also does leave some of the metallic standing funny on the panel. So I've got my tack cloth, and that is going to take off any loose paint that hasn't stuck to the panel properly and it isn't stood up. You can get away with this, but believe it or not, this is quite a big process or a big step to getting a really nice coat of paint. Let me tack rag it off with 2 hands, and let me quickly show you this. Check out all that on the tack rag. We don't want that loose paint under the lacquer because it will change the colour ever so slightly. Edges first. First coat has flashed off, and it's not glassed out because it's the first coat. All paint has slight texture, and that's the flow of the paint as it leaves the gun. But what you do when you put 2 coats on, or maybe 3, that then flows out really smooth. But if you look, you can see how fine the droplets of lacquer are after it being slightly warmed up in the microwave. 30 seconds. Look, that is the first coat. If I get it really right, you might be able to see the slight texture. But again, all paint has got it, as long as it isn't too thick. I'm super happy with that. Let's get the second coat on. It's the following morning, before we check the bumper out. This is the paintwork I done a couple of days before. We had to paint the A-posts. There's 0 polishing going on there into a fade out. Ignore the dust. But, bumper. It's gone nice and hard. You can see it's nice and shiny. It is properly flat. If you catch it in the right light, you might see a tiny bit of paint flow. Not orange peel, just paint flow. Shiny, shiny. If we check out the reflection, yeah, lovely. There is a bit of dirt around here somewhere. I think there's 2 in the whole bumper, and that's because of all the cleaning, all the tack ragging, wetting the floor, And as we went round and done all the edges first, there's no dry edges. You don't want to miss any bits, see any white paint or white primer showing through. It's shiny all the way underneath. The finish, I'm really happy with that. Hopefully the customer's happy, I'm sure it will, and that's with 3 coats. Sometimes 2 coats lays down better, but the 3rd coat has gone on absolutely spot on. Yeah, absolutely perfect. Yeah, absolutely spot on. So if you want some flatter finish, try 20 or 30 seconds in the microwave. It comes out so atomized, so thin and so fine. The warm lacquer just flows nicely and then flows out absolutely perfect. If it doesn't look right first of all, give it 10 minutes, give it time to flow out. The more thinners you put in, the less chance it's got of flowing out and looking straight. I need to fit this up with all the grills because I've painted those gloss black. Let me fit this up, we'll hang it on the van and we'll see how the colour matches and how good it looks on the vehicle. There it is all back together, and I would give the colour match on the bumper maybe a 10 out of 10. I'm really happy with the colour to colour. If I hadn't have blacked it up first, it might look different, so we're happy we've done the process. I did also gloss black his lower grills, which have come out super nice, but it's not actually gloss black. It has got a blue pearl. It's a midnight black blue pearl, and I did do some little accents and painted the fog light grills body colour. Yes, super happy with that. You can see the finish on the lacquer. I haven't polished that at all. It's still got a couple of nibs in it, but that I call a win. I can't show you too much of the van because this is a bit of a sneak peek into Friday's video. We did give the headlights a bit of a coating with black in the lacquer, looking super fresh. I have since painted something with no thinners in the lacquer, and that was the headlights. I warmed it up, as we've seen, in the microwave, 20 seconds, half a cup, no thinners, a bit of black in with the lacquer, lacquered his headlights, and it literally glassed out. So if you're having to put more and more thinners in to get the smooth look, try warming it up. You can warm it up in the sun, other means. If you're a professional painter, you're going to have a heated mixing room, so this doesn't apply. I'm not trying to tell anyone how to suck eggs. This is more DIY. If you want the flatter finish, make sure you warm your lacquer up to 30 degrees, and you can go with no thinners, and I promise it should glass out. I've now got to paint some arches. I will use the ding ding trick with the lacquer. I've got loads to get on with. If you end up trying out this method and you get good results, let me know in the comments. If you try this method and you don't get good results, drop a comment as well. I'll try to help you. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm out.